Movie House Cinemas, proud sponsors of Conversations with Gerry Kelly. Treat yourself to a movie. Relax in VIP recliner seating without the VIP price tag. At Cityside, Glengormley, Mackara and Coleraine. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Conversations with me, Gerry Kelly. Now, my guest this evening is one of Ireland's and the UK's top comedians, instantly recognisable through a variety of television programmes such as Mock the Week, The Apprentice, You're Fired, Robot Wars, Three Men in a Boat, Live at the Apollo, and many, many more. Dara Ó Briain is also a successful author of science books, and he is an amateur astronomer of some renown, having hosted the Stargazing Live programmes alongside the brilliant Professor Brian Cox. Dara is currently in the middle of a massive UK, Ireland and European tour with the show Recreation. So it's great to have you tonight, Dara.
It's lovely to be here.
How is the tour going?
It's great. I mean, you're catching me at the midpoint, I suppose.
Yes.
So there's a tendency to be a bit exhausted by it. But certainly in anything you do, I find in any project, it's TV projects and things last different lengths of time. There's a point 70% of the way through it where you're over it. Where the novelty's worn off and you're a little bit too far away from the end line, and that's the lowest. But we just went past that about 3 weeks ago.
Right. So where else have you to go to?
Well, we still have. We're doing this. We have highlights. We still go to London, Edinburgh, and Manchester still to come. But we also have about 10 other bits and pieces of little places where you feel like you're sweating the asset. You feel like I have this show, so I might as well be the last few bob out of the show in Chatham or Bedford or places that they're not the ones you'd rush to first. Initially.
If you don't mind me saying so, you have a very rapid, quick-fire delivery.
I do.
Plus your Southern Irish accent.
Yeah.
You make no allowance for that to the English, do you?
No, I don't. It's really... And I probably have put a ceiling on myself. I think it'd be fair to say that I could have been bigger if I'd slowed down. Or if I'd simply watched myself. That is, at some point on my deathbed, I'll have a moment where I go, Jesus, if I just listened to myself once and gone, I should do that slower, because actually I can't even understand it. I think I listened to my own Desert Island Discs and went, that's a bit too fast now. I should probably, wind that back a bit.
But you're not going to do that. Even like you could do America, you do Australia, you do all over Europe.
Well, it's not really meant as and I know that I've changed some things about the way I speak, in that it's probably the only point of comparison between me and Margaret Thatcher is that early in the career I had a softer voice, and then as I've moved on, I've become more punctuated and hard, and I'm hitting the words harder, much like Thatcher did. And it's the only point of comparison between the two of us. But I have, I think, evolved slightly into a much more delivering the lines sharper than I used to. I think I have a natural slight lisp or a slight softness of the past, and I think I've kind of eradicated that by just talking over it.
It's rapid. It's actually rapid.
It is, yeah. The only thing is about it, there's a point of whether this is a good thing or not. It's hardened into a philosophy that there are points where I just am giddy with stuff coming out. And particularly on the improvisational parts,
yes,
where I'm just making something up and I'm taking information from somebody and what do you do, and then there's a tumble of ideas and I'm throwing them all out, and I'm hoping to catch people off guard, and you're kind of knocking people back and back and back on each line, and you hope that that's part of what keeps it funny, is that the punch of it all. It keeps coming, right? Okay. Whereas I'm like, if you go the absolute opposite of people who deliver a dry one-liner really perfectly crisp, like whatever, I would lose confidence halfway through and go, it's not that good actually.
It's not that funny.
Yeah, so I'm going to do fast. I'll do it quickly, and they won't notice that it's not good. It could just be an insecurity thing.
Can we talk a little bit about Recreation, the show that you're doing at the moment? Now, it's by definition, it's the story of you finding your birth mother.
No, the Recreation is my birth father. Yes,
sorry.
It's the second part of a two-parter. For which there can be no trilogy. Because by definition I can't find another parent. I've done 2 of them already. The dream is that at the end of this tour, a young person, 25-year-old, comes out of nowhere and says, you are my father, and that's a whole other show. That would be perfect. And unfortunately, I've done the audit where I've gone through every relationship and bit of a relationship I ever had and gone, no, there's nothing there, like whatever. So, but that would be perfect timing if somebody came out of the maybe not 25 because that's in the realm of the relationship I have with my wife. 30, let's say a 30-year-old. A 30-year-old comes out of nowhere and says, that'd be great. But no, the first show was called So Where Were We?
Yes.
Which was, the title was sort of a nod to, it was straight out of COVID. And it was like, well, let's just resume, let's go back to life. But also, So Where Were We? The resumption of a relationship that was about finding my birth mother.
Right. Let's talk about your birth mother. When did you all? You were brought up in Bray, Dublin.
Yeah.
Did you always know you were adopted?
It's an interesting one that I have a memory of knowing, and then it became this thing that became like a secret that wasn't spoken of. And then I kind of realized I should, and I remember sitting down once with my father and we're having a conversation which I decided, it's probably time I asked everything. That conversation, I'm sure you have to have at some point with your kids where they go, whatever happened to that dog? Did he go and live on a farm? That conversation, with the guy. Why don't we see Auntie Mary very often? That kind of stuff. Is it really nerves? Or is it but it was, and one of the questions was, am I adopted? And my dad goes, yeah. And I said, well, why is this? Why did I not know about it? And he said a lovely thing. He said, we just got bored of telling you. Because they knew they had to say it at the start. They initially said it because there's no secret to it. Obviously, if you adopt a child, you don't walk around with an increasingly large pillow under your top, pretending to be pregnant, and then here's a child. Like, it's not all of your family know, your friends know, everyone knows that you returned home and from an adoption agency with the child, and everyone's very excited for you and all that. Adoption isn't a secret, but in Ireland, obviously, we like secrets, so it sort of became like a secret. And I said to him, and he said, we just got bored of telling you. We told you a lot. But it
didn't register with you.
But it did as a child, and then I think my sister and myself kind of went, let's not talk about that. That makes us different, so let's not talk about it. So we didn't talk about it. And they stopped saying it. And I remember doing a line at the time that I totally get why you would stop reminding your child that they're adopted, because at some point it feels like you're just telling them you're adopted. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Say, hey, well done on your exam results. You're adopted. It just feels like there's some point where you just presume that they know. And I sort of buried it a bit. And I don't think I buried it in a bad way, but I think there's a lot of that made us different from other families, and I didn't talk about it.
So what inspired you then to search out for your
I went to see Philomena. I went to the film Philomena. Yeah.
Yes.
And I sat in the cinema watching it, and it's a wonderful film, very moving film. And then I came out, and I remember standing in Leicester Square and going, I have to find this woman and just tell her it's okay. Tell her, because I had never thought of it from her point of view. I had never thought of it in terms of that there was a woman who gave up a child and she has been left wondering for then 45 years or whatever.
As to where is he?
And how did it all work out? And I realized I really have to get in contact with her just so she knows it worked out.
So how did you go about that?
Oh, it's a whole thing now. Because there was a mechanism within that the Irish government had a kind of a thing that you could apply for information, but it was massively over subscribed with people doing it, and it took a long time to do it. And so basically they were aware. It's changed now because the law has changed, because lots of people campaigning. There was a lot of secrecy about what you were allowed to have, and there was even a law at one stage put on the books by a woman who then was going to run for president in Ireland actually recently, and then dropped out quite quickly because it would be illegal for adopted people to make contact with their original families, with their birth families. I mean, that's how much it had gone that way. Yeah. Whatever. And so that never got that far. But it was still a case that it was against the law to find out this information. So there was two paths. You could either do it properly by going to TUSLA and getting a caseworker who would then on your behalf who would give you a lot of photocopy sheets.
Yes.
About things, about how you should handle the emotional journey of this, and then would contact them on your behalf and send a letter, and then they would get in contact, and then maybe you then could send a letter, and there was a whole process by which that would happen. And then there was also a slightly less legal version, where you could get some of the documents, and if you're lucky you could get a name, and if you got like a first name, like your first name, then you could go into a room in Dublin where all the births in Ireland are registered, and you could get a big book, and you could go to the whole big book and try to find your date of birth. And I remember going into that room and going, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And one of the archivists came over and said, so is this, what, are you adopted? I said, yes, I am, because it's really obvious. It's really obvious. You're the 10,000th person they've seen coming in there to do this. And she said, okay, well, here's an interesting thing, she said. Like, in a real, we're not supposed to tell you this, but here's an interesting fact. And she opened the book up and said, look, there's a maiden name and a married name of essentially the mother's name, the father's name, of every child here. But if the two are the same, if the same name's been put down twice, that's an adopted child. Because they just put the mother's name in both slots. They don't put the father's name down at all. So the mother's name. So you just go through all the pages and you find the ones where the two names are the same.
And you find that.
And you find your date of birth. No, I missed it. I did 4 hours. This is the whole thing. Trust me, I tell a longer version of this on stage. I did a whole search for 2 days. I went in one day and my wife was with the kids just trying to find something to do with them in Dublin. I said, look, let me just do the search. And then I came back and said, I couldn't find it. Can I go back in again? She said, all right, grand. And I went back in the second day, did another 2-3 hours of search to do it. Missed it. Brought the book back and had gone through all these names. And your eyes, you blur. You blur over pages and pages because, like, God knows how many thousands of people are born in any one year. So it's 3 huge thick books of them. And you go through all the pages. I missed it. And then I brought the book back and I was literally packing stuff up at the desk going, well, this is I've screwed up. And the only way to start is to restart the thing. And there was a man pushing a trolley around this archive, collecting the books. And he pushed the trolley. And I remember shunting up to let him go past. And he stopped behind me and he leaned in and went, have another look under S, and then walked away. In fact, I don't think it was S, it was a different letter, but have another look under, you know. And so I went, oh, okay. And then I went back to the archivist and she was there going, oh, do you want this book again? I said, yes, I'd love the book again, because she'd sent him out. And then, so I got in and found it, and I came back and she said, and it turns out that they have a computer record, and she just typed the name in, found it instantly, and then had to watch me do the search.
Goodness.
Because she couldn't do the thing for me.
Yes.
She could have done it in 10 seconds. Yeah. But she did it, and then she sat watching me for 2 days and went, and when I didn't get it, she's like, Jesus, go out and tell him. Go out and tell him.
Tell him where it is.
And then the funny thing was the lovely fella who did it, like, whatever. But then I got the thing, got it all. She gave me the whole thing in the envelope with the whole birth cert and everything. And then he kind of hovered by the door. Just hovered by the door as I was finishing up, like, whatever. And I had to go, Jesus, and get get yourself a pint. And he went, thanks, yeah, you were very good. And he said, look, we're not supposed to tell people, but you know what I mean? It's glad. So there was an open culture of, we want to help you get this.
But we can't actually
formally tell you who this thing. But we're not going to get in your way. In fact, we're going to tell you what the path is, and just you go down the path there.
Okay, you went down the path. You're arranged.
But actually, as it turns out, then at the same time, the social worker made contact. And my birth mother was happy to get in touch.
Can I take you back to that day you met her?
Yeah, you can, absolutely. It was in a hotel in Dublin, the Shelbourne Hotel. It was a place I was staying anyway for gigs, I think. And I went to her, and she came up to the room, and it was, I think it's a moment we tend to hype up a lot in this process, as being, well, there we go. And actually, it's a more complex set of emotions for both parties, and often there's a bit of a 2 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of element to it as well, like, whatever. But, like, I mean, all the shows of adoption end on Davina McCall walking a woman into a room and there's somebody there, and then the music swells and they're like, oh, and that's very much the start.
Was it very awkward though? It
was awkward, yeah. It was unusual. And we get on quite well now. I have to say, she's quite quiet about this and quite discreet, and I generally don't give any identifying, but I will go to the town with them, and I see them every so often, and we'll sit around in the pub and talk about the things that are going on.
But she's Irish.
She's Irish, yeah. And we chat about, the traffic's very bad. I know, well, look, they built the thing here, and we have that kind of, like, surface conversation that we do. So we were able to do that, and we chat away, and we chat about family and stuff like that. But the first time was two people who do not know each other.
But did she not know you?
Well,
did she not know who Dara Ó Briain was?
Yeah, Dara Ó Briain, but she didn't. It wasn't like she had known that all along. And then I put in the letter, so it wasn't a reveal. It wasn't on the day. It must have been a heck of a
shock for her to say, "My God, my son is well known."
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, she's not said much about that. The funny thing was, when I went to meet the rest of the family, they were very cool. They were acted very kind of, oh, right, and you're over in London now, what do you do? And they were like, I mean, because siblings, there's all siblings and everything.
How many, you've now got siblings?
Oh, God, I've got tons of siblings. And you don't know how many cousins I've got. It's literally, honestly, with the ones I originally have and the ones I've gathered since, there's a lot of family.
Serious?
There's a lot of family, like, whatever. You might think of 4 Irish families now. So it's insane. But it was, the first time I remember sitting in the kitchen with them all there, and they were very kind of, all right, and you live in London, you travel a lot with the shows, and they're very kind of, and I said, yeah, and I'm just talking like they have no idea who I am, so I'm going to explain all this, like whatever. And it was actually the second time I met them that a couple of drinks in, one of them said, yeah, because when you left the panel and moved over to London, and I was like, whoa, none of this came out the first time that you'd any clue who I was. But I think people were like just being a bit cautious and not, they wanted to not advance.
So do you still keep in touch with them?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right, let's move on to your dad then.
That's a whole other story. That's the whole thing, because he didn't know. So
I take it your mum and your dad never married?
Oh God, no.
No, so they were two separate individuals.
Different stages, a very early stage of their lives.
Now tell me this, recreation. It's about this. You're talking about
it's about
meeting
this,
your father.
And it's the
But I mean, you're putting something very personal and very sensitive on a public platform.
Yeah.
Have you no qualms about that?
I did much more in the first show, because probably because the first show was a much more emotional show. And it was the first time I'd ever done this, because most of my shows are just nonsense, and here's another bit of nonsense, and this nonsense lasts for 10 minutes, and this nonsense lasts for 2 seconds, and here's another bit of nonsense, and they're loosely linked together, and maybe there's a bigger story. The stories began to get longer because I get better at telling longer stories, and allowing it to go quiet, because I know the relief at the end will be huger and all that. So this story came along at a very good time. I will say that professionally, if I had done this 20 years ago, tried to write a show about this, I wouldn't have done a good job of it. I would have rushed it, or it would have been too short, and I wouldn't have given it the time it needed.
But how do you put humour into that?
Funny things happen, within the story. There are funny moments, but also there's naturally, all comedy is a release of tension. All comedy is just is ramping up the tension and lifting them and dropping them. That's all it is. And either you're by doing it by the change of mood or a change of thing, or you create an idea which jars in people's heads or whatever. But it's all just tension being released, and so if the tension is, I'm walking into a room to meet my birth mother, if like that, there was a point. Probably the nicest line in the first show was, I would read the audience the very first document I got when I appealed for the documents, and what they used to do is they used to send you a précis of the document, because you get things, and it was all redacted, sheet after sheet of sheet with black lines through the whole thing and boxes over everything, and then they would type out a sheet for you that had some details, the details you were allowed to have, and it had a biography of my mother and my father. The father one was totally invented. Yeah, absolutely. And they would just do that. They would just make up something and put it down. And so, but I would read that out, and you could see there'd be this amazing hush in the room, like whatever. Hang on, what the hell was the thing? Because I'd have because I'd put on my glasses and I'd read the line at the end. Your mother was this age, and she had you from this age, and she was blah blah blah. Right there, and I read the whole thing out, and I'd say, I know what you're thinking. The glasses are new, and that line, because the audience are like, oh, and it was this huge, silly joke about my own vanity, whatever, like that, and that always got this huge laugh. It's good. Obviously not tonight, because I haven't set it up right. I'm not judging you. I am not judging you for not laughing at that. On the night you would have loved it. Anyway, but because you build it up, so it's all that. So there's just naturally, when they go silent, actually, it's very. There's different kinds of silence, and it takes a while to have the confidence to read that silence isn't people not interested, although it's very difficult sometimes to read. It's the people on the edge of their seat, silent. And when they're on the edge of the seat silent, then the laugh coming is going to be enormous. The sense of relief is going to be great.
So the recreation is about your father.
Yes, and the only one without, because it's more of a romp. It's more of a ridiculous story in some ways. It's not a ridiculous. It's a proper story. It's a genuine and there's emotional, but there isn't the same. It's the comparison I draw is right. Because he never knew, the comparison I draw is the first show was like Philomena. Right, and it's like Philomena. A woman gets separated from a child. She goes through a long journey, and then there's a possible redemption. I would say that I have a much bigger redemption than poor Philomena ever had. Goes through redemption, and the story had sadness and anger and all these things in it. This show is like my version of the film Elf, where a professional man of some standing is minding his own business one day, and the doorbell rings, and a giant in a clown outfit goes, "Hello, Daddy," and it's like it's that story, because it comes from nowhere. You have to contact somebody out of the blue, and it's how you do that. and getting contact with her.
Fascinating.
And it's a lovely story about, and then the building up of all that, like whatever. And there are little emotional details like the, how long it actually takes, for this stuff to happen, how the film's all portrayed as a really fast thing, but actually it takes people months to get over the shock of this, and just ringing somebody out of the blue and going, "I'm your brother," and how that goes, like and it's a quite a thing to do.
Fascinating.
And I'm also, by the way, as it was happening, I wasn't thinking this will be a show. This will be a show down at the end. Certainly the first time I wasn't. I was just doing it because I wanted to do it. Yes, God. But then it was. This was all happening as I was touring the first show, and then it turned into the story became a thing. You go, "No, I've got to tell this story now." They all started as a thing I would tell people at the end of a night. We'd open another bottle of wine. I'd go, "Let me tell you a story." And I would tell them the story, and it would last one bottle of wine among 4 people or whatever. And I realised, that's good. That's like a half of a show, so that'll be fine. That's grand. And I remember doing it the first time in Edinburgh, and the first show in particular, and being very nervous about, is this are people going to be like, well, there's not enough jokes here, like whatever. But people are great.
It's an amazing story. It's an
interesting one to do. The other thing about it is, what doesn't happen in this one, on the first show, there were times I didn't do it. There were nights where I went, "No, this is not the right room for this story."
Okay.
Yeah, and
you read the room that rapidly?
Yeah, and over the course of the first half, you'd see the kind of place it was. Gibraltar. I did a gig in Gibraltar in a cave. And genuinely, if you imagine, they've got caves, like, these caves where they put light shows on and they show, that one looks like, Trump's face, and that one looks like whatever, Africa, whatever. And they have the different shapes of all the stalagmites. And they would do that. And then they realised that by doing this Sonnet Lumiere show, they'd built a theatre. They'd built an 800-seat theatre. So they'd book comedians in, and you ship the audience all the way up the mountain, and then you do the show with drips from the seating around you, and then they'd bring the audience all the way down the mountain again.
So that was not the place
to
do this?
That was not the place for the show.
Gotcha.
An emotional journey into also because a woman collapsed midway through the first half, and this happens occasionally where somebody has a medical issue, so we had to deal with that, and so I'm coming back after that going, I'm not now, we've all had a thing, she had to be then brought down the mountain, God love her, brought to hospital. So the whole thing was like, this is, no. And so I used to have another 30-minute just jokes that I would just slot in, the greatest hits of all things, and I just put that in instead.
That's obviously been a huge part of your life this past few years. But going back, with very little time left to talk about the other interests in your life. You went to UCD.
Yeah.
You come out as a mathematical physicist.
I come out as somebody who studied mathematical physics. I wouldn't say I came out as a mathematical physicist. I think you actually have to get the job and do the job.
Yeah, but did you ever have a job as a mathematical?
Never had a job in the field. No.
What is mathematical physics?
It's the theoretical mathematical underpinning of the structure of the universe.
Of course it is. Of course, I did not realise that.
It's relativity and it's quantum mechanics and these things.
So is that how you got your love of space and all things?
Oh, that's from space. It was space. No, I would say that almost beat the love of space out of me. Doing it while also at the same time wanting to run off and tell jokes, because I discovered that in university. And it took. Honestly, I had a bit of a journey through college where first year was very good, and then second year I discovered both standing in front of audiences talking and getting laughs and the joy of that, and also the kind of women who weren't in my secondary school, really interesting, dark women, and really with emotional subtext, so really exciting. So and on booze, that was the other thing. So I discovered second year was a really exciting year for me in many, many ways. And that very much, made the academic work pale a bit, like whatever. And I wasn't great for about a year and a half. And God loved them. There was a professor called Sean Deneen, no longer with us, but who said to me after I'd not done brilliantly in my final, said, we could probably say you were under a lot of emotional stress with all the stuff you were doing, the external stuff. I said, we probably could say that, Sean. He said, yeah, we should do that, like whatever. And he wrote a letter kind of waffling it a bit.
Well, that got you through?
And it got through, and I got a chance to go back and do it again.
Okay.
I did a far better job of it again. And that was really important because that restored my love of it all.
Well, you needed a bit of background to it because you worked with Brian Cox.
Worked with Brian Cox, yeah.
You interviewed Stephen Hawking.
I did,
What a privilege that was.
Oh, that was phenomenal. That was great, yeah. And he was a wonderful man. The best scene was, there was a bit where we were just sitting in his kitchen and I'm reading him in the newspaper.
But he's got his voice box.
The whole thing, oh yeah, absolutely. But there's times we just, you'll sit there and he will just have somebody read, it was The Guardian, I think it was, and I just read him a news story about saunas are good for the health, or somebody's building a jet pack, and I would read him the story, and he just enjoys that as a company. And then after a while, maybe an answer would come too, because it took him at that point quite long to compose an answer. And it was a lovely scene. And then they just contacted the Guardian and says, oh, look, by the way, there's a scene in this documentary where Stephen Hawking is having the Guardian read to him, and somebody in the Guardian went, oh, if you're reading from my newspaper, you have to pay us £5,000 for the rights to the thing. And they said, well, we're not going to do that. And so the scene never appeared in the thing. And you kind of go, oh no, if you ring somebody else in the paper, tell them that it's Hawking being read to from your paper, they're clearly not going to stop you doing it. And it's like, no. And so it was just stupidity on all parts. But it was an absolute privilege just to be in that universe. I was at his funeral, and I remember meeting like an old colleague of his, and we were in this room in Cambridge in which there was already a portrait of him on the roof alongside Newton and there's a portrait of Hawking. We're both looking up at it, and he goes, and the guy said, did that even happen? I said, I know. Isn't it an astonishing life to have passed, that we saw happen, whatever.
Absolutely. I would love to have met the man.
Oh, phenomenal man. Loved fireworks. Really? Loved fireworks so much so that he did an ad for a local firework company of just him in the chair with loads of fireworks around him, looking thrilled. And in return for which, they then came to his house and did a fireworks show at his birthday every year. A proper 45-minute, like small town's budget going on to this thing over that. Wow. And people gather out. And I remember meeting the Astronomer Royal, Nigel Rees, the Astronomer Royal, at this thing, and going, oh, hello, how are you, sir? He said, I didn't see you. He said, no, I'd forgotten it was on, and I looked out my window and saw a fireworks display. I went, oh, it's Stephen's party tonight, and then would walk across, and they'd wheel Stephen out, and they'd do a full fire on this small residential street. So the rest of the families had to put up with a 45-minute fireworks display.
Dara, if I had fireworks, I would light them for you now.
You're very kind. I mean, honestly, that's this is too easy. This is really, that's it. That's all the talking done.
Well, I got 3 questions in, which is 2 more than I expected to get in. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please thank my guest tonight, the fabulous Dara Ó Briain.